A new development has come up in Formula 1 once again, and this time it's in the form of an additional format called the Sprint. Formula 1 weekends have been given a shake-up with the introduction of the Sprint, and in this video we're going to be covering everything that you should be expecting from this trial, which is aimed at enriching the experience of the Grand Prix. Keep watching to find out everything. What is the Formula 1 Sprint? This is a short race. Think of it as a teaser that is designed to provide an adrenaline-filled and fast-paced racing event. In the Formula 1 Sprint, the drivers go all out from start to finish, blazing through the tracks without the need to pit. Those who are fast enough to finish in the top 3 are awarded with points. The winner gets 3 points, with the second and third getting 2 and 1 respectively. The race is usually run over a 100-kilometer track, and it's meant to last about 25 to 40 minutes. The Sprint wouldn't have a podium ceremony, as that privilege is reserved for the top 3 of the Grand Prix. However, the top 3 are not completely forsaken, as they get given a special post-Sprint presentation. It is worth noting that the Sprint is not completely separate from the Grand Prix, as the finishing order of the Sprint usually determines the lineup for the main event. The main format of the Grand Prix is unchanged, and the drivers run the full distance as usual. The grid procedure for the Sprint would be more modest, and media and guests will be permitted to be on the grid, as it was during the non-COVID times. The national anthem, however, will be specific to only the main race. What will happen to qualifying? The qualifying session, which has been a big part of the show in recent years, will remain. The 1-hour session format, which is split into 3 segments, would actually be moved to Friday, making the weekend a complete trio. It would give the first day of track action some much-needed atmosphere, as well as a crescendo. The session has been slated for later in the day for fans who are still working on Friday. There have also been changes to the tyre rules for the qualifying session, and now only soft tyres are permitted throughout the race. Because of this, drivers and their teams would have the freedom to start Sunday's race on any compound, instead of having to use the tyre they qualify on. There will also be just 2 seasons for practicing during the weekends, with each session lasting 1 hour. The first practice session would take place during lunchtimes on Friday, with teams being able to use any 2 sets of their weekend allocation of 12. The allocation has been reduced by 1 set of tyres due to the fact that there is reduced running in total over the weekend. They must also set aside 5 sets of softs for their qualifying, and 2 sets of any tyre for the race. The assumption is that the teams will use the harder compound to get their basic set up. Why the change? The new qualifying system was established to encourage more spectators to have an interest in Formula 1, as the short race, which is approximately 1/3 of the length of a normal Grand Prix, acts as a taster before the main course. The fact that it sets the grid for the normal Sunday race also adds to the tension. The first outing of the Sprint was generally a success, as deemed by the big names at the head of the FIA, as well as the drivers and teams themselves. Fernando Alonso had an amazing performance, standing out as he dragged himself from 11th place to 5th. Ross Brawn said that he would buy a ticket for a spectacle like that every day if he had to. The top brass is pleased with the performance of the drivers, and the Sprint proved to be worth all the hype, as there was a lot of action throughout the race. Right from the first lap, the atmosphere was nail-biting and sensational. Throughout the rest of the race, there were little duels that made it worth watching every single minute. Will there be a sprint race in 2022? As F1 Managing Director of Motorsport, Ross Brawn noted, after the first sprint race, whether or not sprint races will be held next season is mainly contingent on how well this year's races go, although the indicators are good. He said, "I'm quite satisfied with F1's inaugural sprint weekend. We expected it to increase fan engagement over the course of 3 days, and it did. I don't see how that could have done anything but improve the racing weekend." The FIA is going to reflect on the format in the coming weeks, and there are definitely some points they need to discuss with the teams, as well as listen to all the feedback that's coming as well. Since this is still in the experimental stages, and there are more sprints to come, it's important that they don't rush any decision until all the sprints have been done on the 3 different tracks. If sprint events do well on a consistent basis, other format changes may be considered. Because sprint races may have a detrimental effect on Sunday, it has been suggested that the grid for both the sprint race and the main Grand Prix be determined by Friday qualifying, and additional championship points be awarded down the field for the Saturday event. How did the British GP sprint go? Overall, the sprint race format was well appreciated, owing to the anticipated action occurring to some extent, and also making the entire weekend more entertaining, with normal qualifying taking place on Friday night. On lap 1, leaders Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen tangled, and there were scuffles across the field, which provided a lot of entertainment, not least with Fernando Alonso and his Alpine, who jumped from 11th to 5th and then held off the two quicker McLarens. "Yeah, I like the format," said Alonso. "I think we have action 3 days, Friday, Saturday and Sunday, so it's good for the people. Last year when I was watching the races at home on Friday, it meant nothing because the long runs, well, they're very important for the teams, the drivers, but not for the people at home. That they were very long practice to understand from the outside. I hope we can keep this format. It will be interesting to see where the FIA goes with this new development, as everyone seems to be in support of it. It definitely makes for some interesting competition, which is what we love to see in the sport." Well, that's all we have for you today on the Formula 1 Sprint. If you enjoyed this video, let us know what you think of the Formula 1 Sprint in the comments section down below. For avid F1 fans out there, check out our last video on Porsche and their re-entry into Formula 1. Well, that might be on the cards. You better watch to find out. Till next time.